everyone, Mango7Roll here. How we doing today? Welcome to another episode of Epic 7, and today we're doing Mango 7 Mentor, and we are doing part 2 of our artifacts guide. We already did 3-star and 4-star artifacts. If you need that information, check it out. I'll leave it in the comments down there below. And if not, let's just go over all the 5-star artifacts. This might be a long video with lots of information, so I'll try to timestamp down there as well specific classes, so maybe you can find the artifact you're looking for. So without further ado, this video is sponsored by Smilegate Epic 7 themselves. Thank you so much for that. And let's get into this. Let's just start one by one through warriors. We'll go through every single artifact and I'll give my little 2 cents about them because there are so many. This is going to be like an hour-long video, I swear. So the first up, we have a Little Queen's Huge Crown. This one is a single target attack damage increase, while also increases the damage if they have a barrier. Personally, I haven't used this yet, and I don't plan to use this. I feel like warriors have a ton of really good artifacts, so maybe if this is one of your only ones, you might want to boost it up, maybe use it. But outside of that, we have other options for warriors that I would definitely prefer. Speaking of other options, there is Alensidox's Wrath. This has been through a change or two in the past, and now it's a flat 15% crit rate. And also, if the character has an extra attack, much like Alencia does with her skill 1 into skill 2, or Charles, even though he's a knight, same example, skill 1 to skill 2, it increases their CR by 20%. This is definitely one I personally really like. It allows you to patch up your critical hit chance, especially if you're a new player. Maybe you don't have the best of gear. This is a really good way to get that extra crit rate here, while also getting a little bit extra CR for the characters that have that extra attack all the time. We have an anti-magic max here. This is one of the collaboration ones, and honestly, I don't use this one. I do have it, but I don't use it, and at the start of the turn has a 100% chance to grant a random buff to the caster for 2 turns. I mean, I imagine this can be great on some people, but personally, if you don't have it, you don't have it. When the collaboration comes around with Tensura, again, maybe you can pick it up. We then have another collaboration artifact in Azure Comet. This is another base 15% crit chance artifact, and when somebody dies, it increases the caster's combat readiness by 24. So this is very similar to the CR boost and Alensidox's Rage, but it just goes a little bit differently, right? We have a different way to get CR here. Another one that I personally don't use, but maybe you'll find a use for it somewhere if you need that 15% crit rate. Then we have Bordercoin. Bordercoin has been in here for a long time, and it's a really good artifact, and it is whenever you use a non-attack skill, it increases the attack by 15% and speed by 10% as well. It can stack up to 3 times. So if you use this on somebody like a Sirmia, who's in the picture, of course, you get a speed boost up to 30% and a 45% attack boost on her throughout the battle whenever you use her skill 2, and her skill 2 leads right into her skill 3 to do extra damage. This is a really great artifact for very specific people. I personally put it on my Sirmia and never take it off. She is just the perfect use for it, and it's absolutely worth using if you have Sirmia and you like Sirmia, because it's built specifically for her. We then have another limited artifact in Champion's Trophy. This is a effectiveness by 30%, and it has a 26% chance to stun on a skill 1. And of course, this doesn't work with dual attacks or anything like that. So this works perfectly for any warrior that has an AoE skill 1. And you'll notice with a lot of these these artifacts, they were built alongside their character to go with them. So me personally, I use this one specifically on Holiday Euphine, and that's it, because I think it works perfectly for her. You have the effectiveness you need, you have the 26% chance to stun, which is pretty nuts for a skill 1, honestly. Really like this, and because Holiday Euphine also has a passive, you find yourself using your skill 1 much more often. Definitely recommend this artifact if you can pick it up next time this cute little volleyball player comes around. We then have Circus Fantasia, and this is another effectiveness artifact, but unfortunately, it's just an effectiveness boost, and then it decreases every time the caster attacks, down to 25%. So it starts at 50%, assuming these are max numbers we're going to be talking about, by the way, and then down to 25%. I think this is not really a useful artifact. I think there's definitely places you might want to use this, but this is not something I would recommend upgrading at all. I don't like this one too much, even though the character is one of my favorites. I would definitely recommend skipping Circus Fantasia. We have another one here, Cradle of Life, and this is one that gives a debuff, a random one for 2 turns after using a single attack on the caster's turn. This works on like Secret Skill 1, Secret Skill 2, Secret Skill 3, anything that hits one target basically, and it can do burn, bleeding, decrease attack, and decrease hit chance. I mean, there are uses for this, but it's another one I don't really super recommend leveling up too much. There's a couple other artifacts that do similar things like Torn Sleeve or Junkyard Dog that are also useful on warriors as well. So I would probably put this one behind if you're limited on artifact charms, and there's better options for Sigrid as well. Obviously, using a Joker would be infinitely better. And we have Creation and Destruction. This is a 20% chance to not proc your skill cooldown after using a skill. This is one I don't dare to use because it's like 20% of the time you get to use your skill 3 again, which is insane. But that's 20% of the time, and the other 80% of the time you're not doing anything. So another one of these artifacts, I would put this one on the sidelines for somebody that comes out. Maybe they have a busted skill 3 or skill 2 or something like that, and you just really, really want that extra 20% chance to get to use it again. Maybe there's like somebody that has a huge skill 3, does a ton of damage, and then gains an extra turn after, you know, maybe something like that. But for now, let's put it behind us. We then have Draco Plate. Draco Plate is ridiculous. It's an amazing artifact used for everybody. That is a warrior that is in battle generally, and what it does is increase your critical hit damage by 30% and also decreases damage suffered by critical hits by 16%. And if you do any sort of PvP, you're virtually always getting crit. Pretty much every single unit that does damage after Huiyang's gone now does crit to do damage, so getting that 16% reduction is massive. If you have Draco Plate, definitely max it, and if you have 2, maybe max 2. It's one of the best artifacts I can find. I love it. And Durandal is one. There's a lot of artifacts, team. There's a lot of artifacts that I personally like, but I don't know how useful it is. So this is one where when your health is under 75%, you get a CR boost after you're attacked. I've used this on a ton of units, but I always find there's just better options. For example, if you use it on somebody, you could be using something like a Crimson Seed instead, which we talked about in the previous video. You could be using so many different options instead of this than the CR boost. I personally would skip this one for now. Maybe there's somebody that is especially good for it, like some sort of cleanser or anything like that you really want to boost up. But I have it on the back line currently. There are so many, team. There's so many. This is going to take forever. It's okay. We're in this. Full Metal's Automail. This is another collab artifact. We've got Edward right there. And this one increases the crit chance by 10%. And after every attack, increases the critical hit damage by 8% and speed by 8%. And can stack up to 4 times. So you have 36% of both of those stats. And by 36%, I mean 32. It's good. It's good. But I don't have a use for it right now. And as we've said before, there are so many artifacts, so this is one I haven't really upgraded and haven't really used, and also it's limited, so it's probably one, especially if you're watching this video and you're a new player, that you'll want to skip. We then have Indestructible Gators. This is Huiyang's artifact, and this is increases attack by 10%, and if a non-crit is made, has a 100% chance to burn for 1 turn. This was fantastic for so many people that have a ton of damage, and you want to get that burn on because burn scales with attack. Somebody who doesn't crit has a lot of attack, but there's better options. We've talked about that before, and also I don't know how useful Huiyang is right now, and we know how useful Arranca is, so this is another one I personally don't use. Don't worry, there's more. This one is another collab one, and honestly, this is one I don't even know what it does, so I'm guessing it's not the greatest. And it increases the effectiveness of all allies, and the target has a debuff when the caster attacks with a single attack, increases the damage by 24%. So this is actually better than I thought it would be. Maybe there's a bunch of people that can use this sort of artifact that wants to give like a solid buff to the team while also increases single target damage. And if you're giving a debuff to the team, you're going to be doing damage to something that's debuffed. So maybe you could use this in a PvE setting, although personally I wouldn't think it's worth the artifact charm usage because I can't think of anything specific where you'd really want that. And the artifact charms are just super, super useful. Also, it is a limited artifact. So we then have another limited artifact. There's quite a few limited artifacts. Sheesh. And this is a very similar one to Cradle that we looked at earlier, and also to the Gators. And this is a 2-turn burn instead of, I believe, a 1-turn burn from the Gators. And it's a 50% chance. I've used this on many people for Wyvern 13. Generally, somebody you want to get a little extra burns in. I've used it with General Purgus, for example. He tanks the front line. I don't know how popular that team is now, but he can add a couple extra debuffs where he wouldn't be regularly. So maybe you can use it for something like that, but it's something I have in my sidelines and I haven't actively used for a while. And then we have Merciless Glutton. So this is another, you can notice with warriors, we got a lot of single attack damage increasing. And this one, you get the single attack damage boost, although not as high as some of the others, but you get a 12% CR boost to everybody but yourself. This is used for cleave options. For example, if you want to kill somebody with a Luna, you boost the CR of the rest of your team as well. Definitely useful in specific situations, but primarily if you're a PvPer, and even if you're a PvPer, you might have better options available or use better combinations of artifacts on your team. We then have one of the most annoying artifacts in the entire world, Snow Crystal. So Snow Crystal is Chu's best friend, and honestly a lot of warriors' best friends right now, just from the randomness it brings. And what this personally does is it increases the critical hit resistance by 20%. And after the caster suffers a non-critical hit, and increase their CR by 16% after. So absolutely amazing artifact. And again, to remember, you can click usage statistics in the bottom left here. You can probably see the top one is Chu. Basically, Chu loves this artifact because not only does it stack with her critical resistance buff, it also increases her CR. She can also counter. There's so many things going on with this artifact. I absolutely love it. Anything to bring some randomness to the battle in PvP is so, so helpful, because imagine if your team that is against you has a plan to just one-shot your Chu, or anybody with this artifact on, and 20% chance they just lose the battle feels so good when it happens to them and not you. We then have Spear for Purification. This is another one I don't know what it does, so that probably says a lot about this artifact. So this increases the attack by 20%. After the enemy uses a non-attack skill, increases combat readiness to the caster by 10%. This is actually pretty decent. Gives a solid 20% attack boost, and also you can bring it into a ton of people, especially using it on Teu himself here, who does like to do some sort of combat, non-combat stuff, shenanigans with his skill too, basically. I like this. I think I have this underestimated, but again, PvP specific artifact, which is probably why I haven't touched it too much. So then we have Sword of Autumn Eclipse. This is a new one. I haven't really had too much time to use this, but this boosts the attack of all allies by 5% and boosts the chance to hit of the wearer by 20%. Pretty solid. I actually really like this artifact, specifically because the 5% attack. You can use this in PvE as well as PvP. A lot of people use filler artifacts like this for their supports or somebody else in the team that just boosts to the hunt but doesn't really do anything. Perfect use there. And 20% hit chance is pretty massive as well. Ideally, you probably want to use this on somebody like Arunca, but I'm not really finding any use in Arunca. But anybody you want to target, somebody like a Violet, somebody that has extra evasion chance, this is perfect for. I actually like this artifact, and I think it's pretty solid. Finally, we have Sepulchrum. This is one that that's a 4-star. Finally, we have Uberius' Tooth. There we go. I was like, Sepulchrum's not a 5-star. We have Uberius' Tooth, and this is another one that just does extra damage after a single attack. This was absolutely bonkersly broken with Huayang, where the damage scales by her attack, so it just does chunks of damage afterwards. It's a fantastic artifact, and you need to use it on people who scale with attack. But right now, there's not too many who super fall into this category. We tried it with Arunca, who would be one, and Huayang as another, but you never know in the future when another character like that will come out. So keep this one in your back pocket when you need it for sure. Are you ready for knights now? There are so many knights. We've got Ancient Dragon's Legacy. So this one here increases the critical hit chance by 15%, and after the caster uses a non-attack skill, it's 100% chance to increase critical hit damage for 2 turns, and once every 2 turns as well. So this works perfectly with the person on the picture there. Great old Mortellix, and that's who I use it on. I don't really have this on anybody else. I'm sure there are other uses for it, but if you are a Mortellix enjoyer, something like this fits perfectly, right? It increases its critical hit chance to help satisfy your gear needs a lot easier. It also does crit damage buff, which means you don't need capped crit damage. And it can activate it once every 2 turns, which works perfectly with his passive. So if you do like the Great Mortellix, maybe this is a Great Mortellix artifact, and that's the only one I've used it on. I can't think of anybody else I actively use this on. But again, if you do really want to fill up your crit chance, maybe there's somebody there for you. We then have Bastion of Pelusia. This is a fantastic artifact. I personally love this one, and at the start of the battle, grants the ally with the highest attack immunity for 1 turn and a 30% barrier proportionate to the caster's max HP. This is something I use in PvE all the time, or by PvE I mean PvP all the time, because you can have somebody built with just all the attack, all the damage, no defenses whatsoever, give them that 30% barrier, give them that immunity at the start, and just blow the enemies out of the water. Specifically, I use this in Guild War, where I know I'm going to take a lot of AoE, and the barrier is going to help protect them, and there's not going to be any debuffs on my DPS. So really, really good knight artifact. But the problem is this is only the first turn artifact. So if you plan to go longer than 1 turn in your battles, you really want to use one of the ones we're going to talk about soon, because there are so many good defensive artifacts, like we talked about, like the Aureus and Adamant Shield in previous videos, that this is a very specialized one. And as I talk about this now, I don't really use this anymore, specifically because everybody strips. So that immunity isn't helping anybody for a lot of the teams you fight now. So you'll bring this in and they'll just strip the immunity and the barrier and you die. So very, very specific uses for Bastion of Pelusia. We then have Crown of Glory. I believe this is a Guild War artifact. So this increases the defense by 16%, and it removes 5 souls from the enemy when the caster suffers an attack that targets all allies. Obviously, a really fantastic PvP artifact. If you toss it on somebody on one of your Guild War teams, or maybe your RTA teams where people plan to cleave you, 1 hit from an AoE might completely ruin their plans. This is one I personally don't use because I don't do that type of PvP. But if you do, maybe this is something to look into for specific units. And then we have the most annoying artifact in the game after Snow Crystal, before Snow Crystal, is Elbris Ritual. It also has one of my favorite arts in the game. I absolutely adore this art, and I want this person on my team. So this has a 20% chance to counterattack when an ally except for the caster is attacked. This is used on virtually every knight that has something on their skill 1, basically. Absolutely build this up to max. If you have 2 of them max, maybe max out 2 of them as well. I probably would if I had them. It's such a good artifact on everybody. I use it on, I mean, we can just look right now at our knights, right? Can't really see their faces with my faces there. But right now, I have mine on my Belian. She's on a counter set and this, which means you can counterattack from them hitting you, and you can counterattack from them hitting your friends. You can also use it on like so many of these characters, right? Like so many knights can use this. Basically, just anybody, just toss it right on there. Famously in the past, somebody like Charles used it as well. Absolute killer artifact. Then we have Holy Sacrifice. So this is like a surprise, you know, I'm back. This revives your team, or not your team, the person who dies with it. 100% chance if it's maxed, grants them a barrier and 25% health. I use this for my Crow, and my Crow always dies. He comes back, then he horses somebody in the face. Perfect for that. It's also surprisingly good for PvE. If you have a lower defense Crow, you can't survive Wyvern too much, you throw this on them, they tank, they die, they come back, they die again, but by that time you've beat the hunt. So Definitely like this artifact. I think one of these is worth maxing for sure. You can also throw it on basically anybody. Any knight artifact or any knight character you just want to throw it on and throw people off. For example, you could, we just had the list open here. You could throw it on like a Senya and super surprise people thinking she's dead. You could throw it on a blind. She comes back and blasts them in the face. There's so many different people you could throw it on. We have Justice for All here, and this is a 100% chance to grant the caster a random buff for 2 turns. And these are pretty sick buffs too. A lot of times random buffs aren't the best, but this one is attack, speed, defense, immunity, barrier, critical hit resistance, continuous heal, critical hit chance. There's so many. Absolutely love this artifact as well. There's so many people you can use it for. Somebody who goes a lot like Falcon or Clury is great for this. And you can't go wrong with Justice for All on anybody. You just need a filler artifact, throw it on there. All of these buffs are good, except for maybe critical hit chance if you're not a DPS. But still, fantastic, fantastic artifact. And then we have another limited one. This is Mature Sunglasses. And this has increased the critical hit damage by 30%. And when attacked, increases damage suffered by 14%. I actually didn't really notice how good this is. So this is for a damagey type knight because you're not protecting your team, right? This is specifically to boost your DPS and boost your defenses and screw the rest of your team, which I like. She looks like somebody who wouldn't care about anybody else while she's sitting there legs crossed, you know? Definitely I like this artifact. This is one I need to build a little bit more. This is a mentoring for me as well too. Like I feel like I could use that on so many of my characters. Like the problem is though, like I'd love to use it on somebody like a Belian, but she's stuck with Elbris, and I think a lot of those damage artifacts, damage knights are stuck using that Belian, right? Or I think a lot of those damage artifacts are stuck using that Elbris Ritual Sword. So yeah, fantastic artifact, I think personally, but I'm not sure who I would use it on currently. And then we have Noble Oath, and this, as your health decreases, defense and effect resistance increase by up to 100%. This is one I just toss on people every now and then just because I randomly had it maxed out really early. But I would not upgrade this again if I had the choice. I'd rather have my artifact charms back. There's just not too many situations where I'd have this over permanent mitigation. So you can probably skip that one if you want. We then have Rise of a Monarch here. And oh lordy, these do so much, guys. So this one increases the defense by 10%. And at the end of the turn grants a barrier equal to 16% of the caster's max health for 2 turns. The ally, except for the caster with the lowest health. So basically, it is Fallen Cecilia's passive here. I don't actually use this on somebody right now, but maybe this is somebody I should be using regularly because that's a pretty big buff to somebody who moves kind of fast as a knight and has a little bit of barrier protection. This one might be one I look into again pretty soon, but again, I like a lot of other knight artifacts. There's just so many good ones here. We then have Spear of the New Dawn. This is just additional damage to the target, much like the warrior one, and it's only after a basic skill and proportion to the caster's attack. So somebody like a Senya is just perfect for this, right? Like you have to be a knight for this, and you have to have a ton of attack to get this to work. So basically Senya, and that's it. Is mine using that artifact? Is mine using Spear of the New Dawn? Yeah, mine is using Spear of the New Dawn as well here. And I only have a 95% chance. So that's the problem when a lot of these aren't maxed, right? Going from like a 50% to a 95% chance to 100% is a lot different because sometimes if these 5-star artifacts don't proc what they're supposed to do, you just lose, right? So keep that in mind as you're building these artifacts. We have 3 more here. Sphere of Sadism. I actually don't have this one. Yulha Best Girl. And this one at the start of the battle grants a barrier to the caster for 2 turns, and when attacking with a single attack, the caster is granted a barrier. Damage dealt increases by 20%. Basically, anybody who can barrier themselves regularly and has a ton of single attacks might be useful for, especially somebody that I'm trying to think of reasons here, guys. This is like grants a barrier at the start of the turn, yeah, but it's gonna get dispelled, right? By the time you take a turn, it's gone. It's over. So I find this way too conditional to use on anybody unless there's somebody that self buffs before they attack to really make this worth it. So this is one I would pass. It's probably why I didn't go for this and summon for it. And two more here, Sword of Ezra, and this is decreases damage suffered by the caster from elite or boss monsters by 30%. Maybe in some sort of PvE this might be used, but I personally don't use this one whatsoever. In PvE, something like Aureus is just so good, right? It's hard for me to want to use something like this, and it's hard for me to want to upgrade something like this as well. If we had infinite artifact charms, maybe that's one I would consider doing. Finally, Wings of Light and Shadow. This is another one that patches up your stats. 15% chance to crit increase. And when a critical hit is made with a single attack, increase the damage of the next attack by 20%. So actually another solid artifact, especially somebody like the one on the screen, Ilianav here, who has skill 1 into skill 2, which she does have skill 1 into skill 2, right? I believe she does. Somebody like a Charles as well. But still, a lot of those units that have those abilities would just rather use Elbris. Elbris is just such an overpowered artifact that it makes it really, really difficult to use any others for situations like that. Okay, we're going to start going through these faster because there's so flipping many of them. We don't need to talk about all of them specifically because a lot of them aren't the most useful. For example, Kisei's artifact Alabastron here is not super useful. It increases your effectiveness and gives a debuff, but I would not recommend building this one here. However, Alexa's Basket does a lot. This boosts your this has a 40% chance rather to boost. I said boost as in it happens every single time because it does when you're against it. 40% chance to grant increased attack greater, which is massive, and critical hit chance to the caster for 1 turn. So you can get both of them. Absolutely max Celeste's Basket if you can get it. Fantastic artifact on any thief that has like tons of damage possibilities, like Arbiter Vildred. Perfect for Arbiter Vildred. You've seen so many people die to that in the past if you've been playing PvP, PvP, PvE, all of the things. And we have Double-Edged to Crescent as well, and I like this one a lot. I'm actually using this a lot more recently. 20% flat evasion chance, and then a chance to counterattack after you evade. And I like this one because you get the flat evasion guaranteed right at level 1, so you don't really necessarily need this maxed. And being able to counterattack on a thief that doesn't normally counterattack is fantastic and super surprises people. We then have Goblet of Oath, which is a Piera only artifact basically, and increases their effectiveness by 30%, and after using a non-attack skill, decreases skill cooldowns by 1 turn, 3 times per battle. Again, this is 100% a Piera and Piera only artifact right now that I can think of. Maybe there are others, but none that stand out as much as it would for Piera. Then we have Manica Control here. This increases your crit chance by 20% and your critical hit chance by 15% on a single attack. I do like this artifact, but I don't like it as much as other artifacts of this kind just because the hit chance isn't capped at the start, and that's like the most important part here. I feel like if you're using this artifact, you really want your hit chance up. So I personally don't have this one built because I don't have it maxed, and I think there's other thief alternatives. We then have one of my favorite artifacts, Rhianna Lucielle. This has a 20% chance to be granted an extra turn at the end of the turn, and it can only be activated once per turn. So this is just... the art's so good, guys. I don't know how the bending works in this scenario, but the art's so good. This is just a great artifact for just screwing over your opponents. Recently, I was against a Ran in Guild War, and the Ran decided to do his RNL shenanigans and one-shot my Araminta, which actually has never happened before. And by one-shot, I mean like killed him after all his abilities. So fantastic artifact to use on so many different people. Like if we take a look at my thieves right now, you can use it on so many. Like I was even considering using it on Savior Aiden because even though this is great, 20% and then the elemental damage, being able to cycle through your skill 3 seems so fantastic here. And it's not just to do extra damage with your RNL, but it's also to lower your cooldown, right? For every turn you take, you get that reset. It's also been very popular on Baiken, who's another limited unit. And I personally have mine on Quana that I used last. I took off for gear right now, but I used it for Quana for a PvE fight recently. Really like this artifact. Super fun, which is really important to me as well. Then we have Celine's artifact here, Secret Art Swordstorm. So this one, after the enemy uses a non-attack skill, increases CR of the caster by 24% and has a 100% chance to increase the attack of the caster for 1 turn. So obviously, this is fantastic for somebody like a Celine. A lot of these artifacts are kind of designed for the hero in mind, and this is no exclusion here because it is perfect for her. And also, this is really nice here. It's activated once per turn, so you can proc this all flippin' day long if you want. Especially since this boosts her CR as well, right? So really love this artifact if you are a fan of somebody that likes to counter non-attack skills all the time. It's not my playstyle. I don't use this one so much, but for somebody who does, fantastic. We have Shepherd of the Hollow as well. I believe this one got buffed recently. 20% flat evasion here, and damage dealt increased by 12%. And as health decreases, damage dealt increases up to a maximum of 24%. So another perfect artifact for the person on the screen. This is Kayron, and it's pretty hard to beat something like this for Kayron unless you're going the Dust Devil build. I really love this artifact for that case as well. Yeah, anybody who is consistently low health, maybe has immortality, maybe has invincibility, something like that when they get low, perfect for somebody like Kayron. We then sort of cycling seasons, and this is good old Aiden's. You don't need to max this one. All you get is this bonus health and attack that you can't see here, but I personally maxed it because I really, really like Aiden. You get this just for doing all of the quests alongside her. This is a free 5-star artifact. You get to max it out for free and everything. Absolutely recommend doing this. And I think it's worth upgrading as well, just for the stats. If you plan to use Aiden more than a couple times, as I do, I use her a lot right now. We then have Sword of Summer Twilight. I actually don't have this. This is Vildred's, and this pens all the target's defense by 20% when using a skill that targets all enemies. And when defeating an enemy with a skill that targets all enemies, combat readiness of all allies except for the caster by 10%. Obviously, this is perfect for somebody like Vildred. Vildred is built to do AoE damage, kill everything, and then boost himself, do extra attacks, you know. So this just increases that AoE damage. It does all of the things. Really like this artifact for specifically Vildred as well. And I haven't used it anywhere as I say that. I don't think I've ever used this artifact, but I can understand the use of it for somebody who does use somebody like Vildred for cleave. Because in cleave, being able to boost by 10% is insane, because you don't need to kill all the enemies, you just need to kill one to proc that, right? Also, I probably haven't used it because I don't have it. We then have Sword of Winter Shadow. This is Rand's artifact. This increases his attack by 15%. And after using a non-attack skill, has a 100% chance to remove 15 souls from the enemy. So this is another one of those things that might be good for him. I personally find enemy Rands more scary that use RNL, but I don't use soul builds too much. So I don't know how often this is used as opposed to other artifacts for Rand, but boosting his attack is amazing. He always uses a non-attack skill. 15 soul removal seems bonkers as well. I have to imagine this is perfect if you're any sort of PvP player. This is probably something you want to upgrade. And the thing is, if you're relying on this is one of the problems with 5-star artifacts, is it's hard to rely on anything but 100% for something this important. So you do want it absolutely maxed out. And again, if you're ever curious, you can go usage statistics and we can kind of see who is most likely to use it. I knew it would be Rand, but I wasn't sure if there was anybody else who kind of fit the bill. But definitely Rand here uses it the most by far. We then have Torn Sleeve. So this is another exclusive artifact from the Guilty Gear collaboration. This is 2 bleedings. Inflict bleeding for 2 turns after a single attack. This is really good for anybody in PvE where you need extra debuffs like Wyvern. I personally don't really use this one right now too much because I don't use Karen anymore. But if you do use Karen for Wyvern, this is perfect for her. Getting that extra bleed on her skill 1, skill 2, or skill 3 is fantastic here. But of course, it's a limited artifact here. Very limited use as well, but it's really good for consistency if you're having trouble with debuffs on Wyvern. We then have Violet Talisman. This is one of my favorite artifacts. I really like this one. So this works much like a lot of the other evasion ones, but it ramps up higher and starts off slower. which generally means it's worse most of the time. Like in general, Moonlight Dreamblade or any of the other 20% evasion ones usually perform better. But if you have a super, super fast thief that can protect himself as well, and you know it's going to last a couple turns, getting that 30% attack is massive, and 30% evasion is so much fun. Absolutely so much fun. I have this max and I love using it. I use mine on my Rylot right now, and I have my Rylot very fast to kind of work with this, especially somebody who takes multiple turns, right? Because it's so good for stacking like that. We then have Wind Rider. So Wind Rider increases the attack by 20%, and when the caster defeats an enemy, cast Stealth for 1 turn, increases the attack of the caster by 40% for 1 turn at the start of their next turn. So this is something you use for... does my Sid have it right now? Yeah, this is somebody you use on something like a Sid because it has that base increased attack, and also when Sid kills somebody, he'll get an extra turn and he just bodies them the second time. This allows me to bring Sid versus most Guild War contents and kill 2 people in 1 turn with him. Absolutely love it for that, but definitely not required by any stretch. But it is perfect for situations like that where you're instantly trying to one-shot somebody and then instantly trying to one-shot another person. It used to be used with Sez, but now I pretty much only think about it with Sid. Let's talk about Rangers now. Rangers have a lot of weird artifacts that are very, very, very not good, I find. And it has a lot of insane artifacts that every single Ranger tends to want. So we'll start off with Air-to-Surface Missile Misha. And this is pretty stat sticky. 20% hit chance and critical hit damage by 30%. Can't go wrong with this. This is perfect on any ranger that just wants to do damage and doesn't use any of the others. Or if you only have 1 or 2 of the other artifacts, it's good as a filler, which is what I end up using it for. I also really like Bloodstone. This allows you to turn your ranger into a healer. Basically, 26% healing with the lowest health of the damage dealt. Really good artifact. This is a key point to many PvE content, especially Abyss. And I do use it in PvP as well every now and then. Right now, I'm not sure who mine is on. It's on Landy. I switch it a lot depending on what type of content I'm doing. I only have mine at level 18 right now. Maybe I should be upgrading it more. Like I can go like that. Might as well do that. And if I had more artifact charms, I would upgrade it more. I really like this artifact. This is definitely one you should have upgraded no matter what in your kit. We then have Dux Noctix, and I don't know what this one does. So this increases the attack of the caster by 4%. When an ally makes a critical hit, effect can stack up to 8 times. So we get that 32% attack here for cleavers, I guess, or just... I don't see where I would use this over others because this is such stacking and it doesn't stack super high, right? Like if this stacked to like 60% or something, maybe you've got something going on, but it stacks only up to 32%. I think there are better options, and it's so constricting here. So this is one I would pass for sure. And Glow Wings here, after using a non-attack skill, grants a berry equivalent to 20% of the caster's max health to all allies for 2 turns. And it's only once every 3 turns, which I think is the big problem with this artifact. I've tried to use this quite a bit, and once every 3 turns is not great. Even if you're using it on somebody with a non-attack skill, which reduces the cooldown generally by 1 turn, it just still doesn't happen enough to make this relevant. I tried using this on Leica, and it just didn't work well, especially since everything right now dispels buffs and gives you cannot be buffed. So definitely would skip this one as well currently, just because the situation of the meta doesn't really stand for that. And then we have Guiding Light. This is Cerise's artifact, another limited artifact here. And this is a bonkers artifact. It's really good. And at the start of the battle, grants stealth for 1 turn, guaranteed. And at the end of the caster's turn, has a 70% chance to grant stealth for 2 turns as well. So good. You can use this on ranger damage dealers. Like Landy is very popular for this. Great PvE one. We've seen it used on so many different rangers, and especially if you just toss it on somebody that doesn't normally have it, Guiding Light could completely screw up the enemy team. Love this artifact to death, and I really like using this on somebody like Landy. But I use my Landy a lot for PvE, so I have mine generally on like support, like Bloodstone or damagey artifacts. We then have Iron Fan. I was wrong about this one. I thought this one was going to be insane when it was released. 32% damage to ice elemental targets. I thought this was going to be great for PvE situations where you're fighting ice bosses, but it's just not. Not only is it hard to upgrade because it takes so much and you need to max it out, but there's just not too many situations in the game where this matters. It's way too situational to really warrant anything. Especially having to pay money every time you want to switch it. I would definitely skip Iron Fan. But Miss Confile, another limited artifact, but it's probably the most powerful ranger artifact and probably one of the most powerful artifacts I feel in the game. Just overall, this has a 60% chance to increase defense on an enemy for 1 turn after a single attack. So this works on Cerise, for example, a limited unit. She has a single attack on her skill 1 and her skill 2, which gives her 2 ways to defense down in her kit. It's absolutely insane of an artifact, and I love it so much. It's so good. The reason why I love it is because 1, it's so good on Cerise, and Cerise is one of my favorite units, and 2, you can use it for PvE. I love artifacts you can use as a dual purpose for both PvE and PvP, and for some situations in PvE, this is also like a must-have. Like if you're looking to do specific challenges and stuff like this, you're not going to do anywhere near as much if you don't have one of these on your team on your Cerise, right? Because you've got the dual attacks coming in with your skill 1, you get the defense break. It's so much damage. Absolutely max this if you have it here, and if this comes back or when this comes back, definitely do your summons for it. It is a really good artifact. We then have Otherworldly Machinery. This is just 16% damage to attacks that target all enemies. Somebody like Yuna might use this. As you can see on the picture here, she has AoE skill 1 and skill 3. I personally didn't bother upgrading that though. We then have Rangar Special Drink, and this is a really popular one. This is specifically used for SSB. I don't know who else uses it right now. Maybe somebody else, but I haven't ever moved mine from SSB. Basically 100% chance to inflict additional damage after attacking and proportionate to the attack. So somebody like Seaside Bologna gets a ton of extra damage out of it. Just able to skill 2 or skill 3 and have your passive proc and just have all this AoE damage. It's so much damage added up, both for PvE and for PvP. But of course, this is a limited artifact. And if you like Seaside Bologna, who's still fantastic right now, by the way, definitely get that one going. We have Seal of Capture here. This is the new one just released, and this one, when a non-critical hit is made after using a basic skill, has a 100% chance to burn the target for 2 turns, only applies to single attacks. So another one of these high attack people burn targets. I don't know who I would use this on currently. Not anybody specifically. This is one I haven't touched yet. It just came out, I believe. The artwork is absolutely monstrous. It's so good, but I don't have a use for that currently. But we have Sharpshooter's Handgun. This is another limited Risa Hawkeye here from the Full Metal Alchemist collab. 25% effectiveness, and a critical hit has a 70% chance to increase speed of the caster for 1 turn. I imagine this may be good in PvE scenarios, but it's not something I warranted upgrading. Effectiveness is just so unfortunate as a stat, right? Because in PvE, you generally don't need 25% effectiveness because the character will have that already for the PvE units. But I don't know. I don't love this artifact, but I can see maybe using it somewhere. Especially since Rangers don't have the best artifacts all around. But we do have Song of Stars. Song of Stars is a 100% chance to mark the enemy for 2 turns. Mark makes them take more damage, or targeted rather. Perfect for one-shots. It's used a lot, and just doing extra damage to single target things. A lot of people use something like this for like Banshee one-shots, for Wyvern one-shots. Really solid artifact for stuff like that, although I don't use it all the time, just very specific situations. We have Spatiotemporal Fan, which is Lua's artifact, and this is another 20% effectiveness one. And I feel like the thing is, if you're going to give somebody 20% effectiveness and then the artifacts give 20 evasion, I think the 20 evasion is a lot better. But after using a non-attack skill, it has a 100% chance to grant stealth to the allies with the highest attack set for the caster for 2 turns. I haven't used this extensively, but obviously this is an amazing artifact. Being able to grant stealth to the ally with the highest attack is fantastic, as we talked about earlier with Miss Confile here. Nope, with where is it? Where is it? Guiding Light here. Absolutely amazing to be able to do that, but I haven't personally used it too much, but I fought against it sometimes and I got wrecked because like they gave their Luna stealth and she killed me. So I definitely regret that. I do love this artifact and I think I need to bring it more into my Guild War battles because of that. We then have Star of the Deep Sea, another limited artifact. And when a non-critical hit is made after using a basic skill, has a 100% chance to plant a bomb in the target for 2 turns. So this is basically a Seaside Iceria artifact. I never take it off her. It's so good for Seaside Iceria. Somebody who can't crit, somebody who likes to bomb, absolutely insane for her. If you do summon for Seaside Iceria, make sure you get this artifact. Make sure you smash them both together and never let them fall apart. And we have one of my fun artifacts in Sword of Judgment. This is just a 20% chance to use a basic skill twice. I like using this on somebody that has really effective skill ones like Landy, who gains CR to herself, or Shuri, who gains CR to the whole team. Really, really, really awesome artifact for stuff like that. But I don't think it's super worth all your artifact charms, especially compared to others, because it's more so a fun filler one that I use. And then we have 2 more. Unseen Observer here. This is basically the Flan artifact. And after they use a non-attack skill, increases CR of the caster by 20% and acquires 10 souls. So this is just literally the cleave artifact and nothing else. You throw this on your Flan, you do your non-attack skill, you get that CR, Flan gets to go, you've got the souls to burn Flan, everything goes great, your entire enemy team's dead. I love it. And then we have Wall of Order. This buffs yourself with greater attack for 1 turn, depending on how many buffs the enemy has. This is something I don't use, but maybe it's useful somewhere. And as we go through this, if anybody actively uses the artifacts I don't use, let me know in the comments down there. Maybe help some people out, because there's so many different artifacts and choices and combinations in this game that a lot of the ones people just don't use because they have alternatives, or don't use because they never thought of it. So yeah, let me know in the comments below if you use something like Wall of Order. Okay, let's talk about mages, my favorite class, and has my favorite character, Araminta. Speaking of Araminta, this is the perfect artifact for her. 24% chance to stun the enemy for 1 turn after attacking. You can use this on quite literally any mage that has AoE. It is so, so good, and the art is the best, and there's just so many situations. You can use it on Etta if you want. You could use it on Aramintas. You can use it on Politis, you can use it on Dizzy, you can use it on Solitaria. There's just so many characters you can use this on. Absolutely max that out when you get it. And we also have Black Hand of the Goddess, Cowrick's artifact here, and this is critical hit chance and critical hit damage by 24% at the start of battle, and then it lowers all the way down to 18%. So this is a really good one to patch up your stats for the very first turns. If you have like a specific team you want to try to one-shot people with and try to cleave, maybe this is for you, because getting that 24% crit chance allows you to build so much attack on your unit. Crit damage, really, really solid for that situation. But this is one I personally don't use because I don't ever find myself in that situation. But if you do, if you're looking for a way to patch stuff up, this is where you go. But again, none of these stats are static, so you're going to need to max it to get the maximum value. We then have Bloody Roses and Melissa's artifact. This is 60% effectiveness, and after attacking with a single attack, has a 50% chance to inflict Vamp Touch for 2 turns. I really, really like Vamp Touch. This allows your whole team to heal. It basically turns a mage into a healer as well. I really, really, really love this artifact on so many different mages for PvE. For example, you can use it on somebody like Zealot Carmen Rose, which is where I have mine on right now. Gives her the effectiveness. You've got Vamp Touch. So good. Basically PvE though, specifically. We then have Chatty, and this basically makes it so that artifact is something else. Grants a huge barrier at the start of the turn, and after being attacked has a 100% chance to grant another barrier for 2 turns when the caster's health is 50% or less. And once every 2 turns. So this is great for somebody who has either like low HP and is going to get popped but not fully popped. Maybe they have the collab unit's passive, Ray's passive, for example. Maybe on a really high HP slash attack mage. There's a ton of people you can use it on defensively, but it's not one I actively use too much because mage artifacts are just insane. We then have Tenebrias, and this is just a 14% dual attack chance, and also when it's not their turn, increases the effectiveness by 40%. I think this technically got better with how they changed dual attacks, but definitely another one where I would just rather have Abyssal Crown. Even on a single target user, I'd probably still rather have Abyssal Crown, but I'm sure there are some uses for that. And then another one that protects. This is Dignisorb here, and this is a berry equivalent to 120% of the attack for 2 turns when the caster uses a non-attack skill, and increases damage of the next attack by 15%. So this is absolutely perfect for another one of my favorite characters, and that is come on, load up. Top model Lulika here, and she's missing some gear. You'll notice a lot of my characters are missing gear right now. But I often have her whenever I do use her on Dignisorb. It's my favorite artifact to put on her, and she's basically the only one I use it for, but there's obviously a ton of people you can use it for. Like Vivian, for example, who's on there, or anybody with a skill 2 that does do that non-attack skill. We then have, wow, I love Mage Artifacts. They're so good and they're so much fun. This is one of my favorites. This is Etica's, and when it's max, has a 50% chance to decrease the skill cooldown by 1 turn at the beginning of the turn. I love this on Araminta because she has a skill 2 and a skill 3, both of which have semi-low cooldowns, and one of which boosts her combat readiness. So a lot of times you can go skill 3, skill 2, proc Etica's a bunch of times and just keep going skill 3, skill 2, and just like destroy your opponent. There's a lot of people this is just really, really good on. Essentially anybody that has 2 skills. You want a skill 2 and a skill 3, and doesn't necessarily need one of the artifacts like Abyssal. But I do like this a lot to take Abyssal off some of my units, even to use it over it, because Etica's is so fun for so many situations. And then we have Fairy Tale of a Nightmare. This is basically 2 different units that I use this on. One of them is on the screen in front of you, Fairy Tale Tenebria, and the other one is going to be one of my new favorite units, Archdemon Mercedes. So after an extra attack, counterattack, or dual attack, has a 60% chance to dispel 1 buff from the enemy, and a 100% chance to deal 1500 fixed damage. Really, really, really good for people who counterattack a lot or do extra attacks a lot that have AoE, because that's 1500 fixed on every target. I love it so much for ADM, and if you like ADM, Archdemon Mercedes, absolutely build this. We have another stat stick here. This is Ignition Cloth Gloves, 20% hit chance, 14% attack. You cannot go wrong with something like this, but you kind of can go wrong at the same time, because there are other mage artifacts that are just so good that make a stat stick kind of look bland. And again, we talked about it last video, but not just 5-star artifacts. Specifically, Tagael's Ancient Tome is basically probably the best artifact in the game. If I were to say there's one best artifact in the game, it would probably be Tagael's, specifically for PvP. So any mage that's a mage can hold that, and that's what makes a lot of these other mage artifacts a lot worse. We then have Knowledge Seed. Don't know what this does. This is Politis, and this is upon receiving lethal damage, has a 100% chance to grant all allies except for the caster a random buff for 2 turns. So I remember why I don't know this. This is not my favorite. It's so weird too, right? Like 2 turns greater attack, defense, evasion, immunity, or critical hit resistance. I just don't know where I would use this, and it's only once per battle. If it was more than once per battle, I could maybe see doing some shenanigans with this with reviving and everything, but because it's only once per battle, definitely see no use for that currently. But maybe in niche situations it may find a spot. We then have Tea Time with Balin Sazan here, and this is another one that helps boost AoE damage and a chance to decrease skill cooldown. So this is kind of a mix of like extra damage and Etica's, but I would rather have 30% extra chance to decrease skill cooldowns than that extra damage here. So I think that's pretty standard for most characters, and anybody who has the AoE would also probably rather have Abyssal Crown. So this one is way on the back line for me, but maybe a filler artifact, because mage artifacts are so demanding that you might not have enough of them for all of your units. Magic for Friends here is going to be Mercedes artifact. Again, you only get her stat boost here. So if you do use Mercedes a lot, definitely put this up to 30. I absolutely did. but this is another one you get for free, and another one that you will only use on Mercedes, and you probably will never take it off. It basically makes her just take so little damage. It's so good, and also counterattacks, of course. We then have Necro and Undine. Undine? I always forget how to say that. It's another one that increases CR after using a attack that targets all enemies. The problem with Necro and Undine is that Abyssal Crown exists, that Tagael's Ancient Book exists, that Etica's exists. There's just so many other artifacts. Also, this is a Guilty Gear artifact. We can see Dizzy right here, so it is limited as well. Scroll of the Shadows is an Aria artifact here, and if the caster's attacks when it's not their turn, damage dealt increases by 16% after attacking, and a 50% chance to inflict a random debuff. Debuffs are great too. Silence, speed, defense, and unable to be buffed. Absolutely love this artifact, specifically only on Aria though. I don't use this on not Aria people, but maybe you can find a use for it somewhere. Like, I say that, but Fairy Tail is just better in most cases for those characters. I think an Aria artifact. I'm trying to think of who else I would use it on, but Aria just seems better. And Abyssal Crown just seems better for everybody who isn't Aria. We then have Severed Horn Wand, which is Ram's artifact, which is another limited one. So this basically increases attack, and when attacked by an elite or boss monster, damage suffered decreases by 20%. Don't really like this one. I think the idea is good, but I don't see the use for it right now. There's just so many other artifacts you probably want to use over this. The damage suffered decreased by 20% shouldn't matter in any PvE situation, because it shouldn't be that dire to keep your unit alive. So you're basically just getting the 15% attack. Maybe if it was a tank or something, you could do it, but right now I don't see anybody that actively would want to use that for PvE. We then have Spirit's Breath. So this is one that is really good for specific characters. This is 100% chance to decrease skill cooldown by 1 turn when using a non-attack skill. You might want to use this on somebody like Lots or A-Lots that has combat readiness boosting, so they can spam that ability forever. Every time it's up, every turn it's up. Great for them. I'm not sure who else I would use it on. Those two specifically are all I ever personally did. And the other thing is too, you kind of want it max, because trying to use your combo in quotes here with Lots or A-Lots, and I guess not regular Lots because he's a Soul Weaver, but with A-Lots here and not getting the 100% chance is very, very unfortunate. What do we have next? We have Time Matter, and Time Matter right now is kind of funny. So increases damage by 12% when attacking, and when an enemy is killed by an attack, increase the damage of the next attack by an additional 24%, reduces skill cooldown by 1 turn. So I've never actually used this artifact in any real situations, but this is best in slot for a Banshee one-shot team, because you can throw this on your Vivian, and because she kills units on the first turn, she lowers her skill cooldown, and it makes it so she does not use her skill 1 on the Banshee, which makes it so she does not proc a dual attack, which means your run has a 100% chance to succeed instead of that chance to dual attack fail. So that's the only reason I use that one. Maybe there's another use. Somebody else will have to tell me on this one, but I specifically keep it for that, and that is it. Which is really funny to have the use is to get rid of the RNG. We have Millim's artifact here, upgraded Dragon Muscles, and I love this one too. When the caster suffers a non-crit, has a 30% chance to counterattack. This is fantastic for any mage who either has critical hit resistance, is used with somebody with critical hit resistance, has a ton of evasion, and I think this is one that the more mages come out, the better this gets. I think we're just waiting for a mage that this is perfect for, and it'll be awesome. Absolutely awesome. I still use it on my Millim when I use her, but I think there's huge potential in this artifact here. Finally, let's talk about Soul Weavers here. So there are a lot of Soul Weaver artifacts, and they all do similar things. They help them support better for the most part. Celestine is one that makes it so whenever you bonk somebody, you get a little bit of healing back. Somebody like Diane, who needs the extra healing on her skill 1, but there's better artifacts for her, I think. Somebody like May Chloe, who bonks all the time. gets that extra healing, but again, I like other artifacts instead. There's a ton of different units you can use this on. Like if we look at Soul Weavers here, basically somebody with only a skill 3 and then a passive, or somebody who does a lot of skill 1ing like Destina here as well. Somebody who's on counter might be really, really, really good with Celestine too. Fantastic artifact, and it is Diane's artifact too, so it's limited. We have Doctor's Bag. I've never actually used this one because I got it really late, but this is a really good artifact. Spells 1 debuff from all allies and 14% healing of each ally's max health after using a non-attack skill, and once every 3 turns. So somebody who has a lot of non-attack skills or cycles through them really quickly, this is great for that. Somebody like a Ray. I believe I used this on Ray recently, or did I not? I don't remember. I took it off, but something like the new PvE Nightmare mode, you can use it there to get as many debuffs as you can off. Also great for PvP as well. We have Flawless Garments. This is Shuna's artifact. I wasn't sure when I was clicking into this. Another limited artifact here, and this is ER by 20% and effectiveness by 15% at the end of the caster's turn. Can stack up to 45%. I don't really see a use for this one. I haven't even thought about wanting something like this. Because whenever I want the ER, I'd rather have better defensive stats than that. Like, for example, we'll talk about Shimadra Staff in a second, that I think has better interactions in Flawless Gardens. We have Guardian Ice Crystals, which is Amaryllis artifact. This is another limited artifact, and it has 15% base ER, and when an ally's health is 50% or less after being attacked, covers the health of the ally by 20% and once per turn. This is a fantastic artifact. I really, really like this one for somebody like Amelia, who has a ton of barriers, right? If you put a barrier on them when they're low health, it'll also heal them up when they go through. It's just a good and safe artifact altogether. And it's another one of those alternatives if you only have one of each, right? We then have Idol's Cheer. Idol's Cheer is a problem for me. It's one of my favorite artifacts. This is Tamarin's artifact, and this increases the CR of the ally with the highest attack by 20% when you're attacked. I have 1 or 2 of these maxed, and I love it. It's so much fun. But the problem is it screws me up every time. I don't know why, but every time I use this, it ends up putting my combat readiness all in messed up orders, and I'm mad for it, and then my healer dies because I don't have a defensive artifact. But it is a good artifact, and one that you can just toss on anybody for fun. It's another one of those. But if you want support, Rod of Amaryllis, probably my least summoned old 5-star artifact. This heals the ally with the lowest health by 24% after using a non-attack skill. So this is fantastic on somebody like Diane who wants the extra healing. You can even use it on Tamarin to get that extra healing done. You can use it on anybody here. Basically, you want to throw it on a healer that doesn't have a lot of healing, right? Like, the idea is to throw it on somebody that doesn't have a ton of healing, like Amelia as well. You've got 2 non-attack skills as well, getting that healing in there. We have Sacred Tree Branch. This is Sharoon's here. This is another effectiveness one, and there's not many Soul Weavers that really prefer effectiveness, so this is one that I don't specifically use, really. I tried to use it once with Sharoon, but it just didn't work out the best. But when you use a basic skill, increases CR of the ally, except for the caster with the highest attack, by 10%. Yeah, so I personally feel like I'd rather have Maid Chloe's artifact, or not Maid Chloe's artifact, Idol's Cheer instead of this, and just lose the 30% effectiveness and also gain the extra. But maybe there's some situation I'm not seeing with that. But here's one I see a situation with where you're going to use it everywhere. This is ER by all allies by 20%. So super great there. And again, this is right at the start, so you don't need this maxed. You can leave it at level 1 even if you wanted to, and get that 20% effect resistance. And ER is really, really important right now, both for PvE and PvP. And also, we take a look at the extra bonus, which is increase the healing received by all allies by 40%. Absolutely love this artifact. It's one of my favorite Soul Weird artifacts, and you can throw it on any one of them. And also to note, if you have a lot of lifesteal units, this also combines perfectly with them because it boosts the amount of healing done by the lifestealing units as well. So great artifact. I personally have mine somewhere right now. I have mine on my Destina right now. So it increases all her healing she outputs, also her ER and everybody else's ER. Love it, love it, love it. We have Stella Harpa, which is used for dispels, right? Whenever you're attacked, you have a 60% chance to dispel one debuff from an ally. Just a solid artifact if you want to get a little bit more debuffs dispelled. Really good for PvE situations where you're getting hit a ton, so you get to dispel a ton of it. And we have Touch of Rekos as well. This is Rhianna's artifact and recovers the health of all allies by 10% after being attacked once per turn. So another one that's really good for very specific things here. You can see that all of these are essentially trying to do the same thing in different situations, right? Like there's 6 different artifacts that help heal, but they all heal in different situations that make them slightly better or worse for different unit, but they can all kind of be used by the same people. So this is another one of those you can kind of throw into the pool here. But 10% is not very much, but it can be activated once every turn. So maybe you'll find something specific you want to use this for, but it's another one I have on the lower end for me. But I know a lot other people use it a lot more proactively. We then have Unfading Memories, which is Dien and Basque here. This is 25% ER and heals all allies by 10% after using a non-attack skill. So again, another Dien style artifact here where also, did I say this was limited? It's not, I don't think. I think they changed it. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure. Somebody in the comments let me know. But either way, this works similarly to Rod of Amaryllis, but it also gives you 25% ER. So actually surprisingly good artifact. When did this come out? This is one of the ones I kind of just forgot about. Maybe it got buffed recently and I didn't know. I know we've been going through a lot of buff patches with artifacts like this. But as we go through, I just want to mention the other artifacts like the Megahara's Tome here. Water's Origin, super important. Not many of these actively protect your Soul Weaver, right? Whereas Water's Origin does. So keep the 4-star artifacts in mind as you're building these other artifacts. We then have a ton of others in 5-star, specifically the common ones. A lot of these are purchased through the guild store or through limited events, or they're purchased through the Hall of Trials. So all those areas is a mix of where you get these. One of them is Symbol of Unity. This is a Guild War one. This increases your hit chance by 20%, which is absolutely massive, and damage dealt by 16%. This I use on a lot of DPS. Basically, anytime I'm like, what artifact should I put on somebody? I slap this bad boy on him to make sure I can't be destroyed by a Violet, and I still can, and I still will, but less likely, right? You've got that extra hit chance, and of course you have that damage dealt as well, right? So another solid artifact here. We have Bastion of Hope as well, which increases the ER of all allies by 20% and the caster's ER by an additional 50%. This is one I don't use because I don't have it. I'm lacking the things to buy stuff in Guild War here. Cruel Mischief is one we don't really talk about too much, but if you're specifically trying to do max damage in Hall of Trials, it's there for you. Proof of Valor is probably one of the important damage reduction artifacts. You can use this on anybody, not just knights, which is a major part of it. Basically makes it so the first couple turns you take damage are super mitigated. You've got 30% damage reduction, and then it lowers all the way down to 15%, which is still good for any non-knights. Love this artifact, and a lot of people used it on a Ravi to stop getting one shot, for example. There's so many uses for this. You can just slap it on any PvPer. Rimuru as well is very good for holding it. And Warhorn is the last one we're going to mention here. This is a 10% attack boost, and every 3 turns, every 3 enemy turns rather, increases combat readiness of the caster by 20%. Love this artifact. 10% attack boost is great for any support, and of course you get that little bit of a 20% CR boost, which is pretty massive as well. You can also use this for PvE one-shots too, or just buffing your attack of allies in PvP too, or PvE as well. Absolutely love this artifact. That is all the 5-star artifacts, and I hope I covered some stuff here. I know that was a lot of like the same stuff, but a lot of them are the same artifacts, just slightly different, right? So long story short, there's a lot of choices in Epic 7, and it's really hard to make the right one. So I hope this helped you out. And if Ken, let me know in the comments below if it didn't. Let me answer your questions. Message me on Discord. I'm here to help as always. I've always been here to help, and I always will be, hopefully. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe as always. Download Epic 7 on iOS or Android, and I'll talk to you later. Bye, everybody.